Hello, beautiful people. Sorry, it took me a moment to get unmuted there. I am joined today, and very happy that it is so, by Ernst van Zyl, Conscious Caracal. He is here to talk with us today about some updates to a very, very important Afriforum report on discrimination against minority groups in South Africa. He's been a guest on our channel before. I'm very, very happy to welcome him back here today. He's doing great work with Afriforum, like another one of the friends of this channel, which does not imply any endorsement on his part for the channel. I just happen to like him. Robert Daigen, also known as Marhobani.
You nailed the surname.
Finally, I'm working on it. So yeah, definitely check out Marhabane, check out Conscious Caracal's channel. Ernst, let me just get through the quick opening stuff here, and then I will turn it over to you. I want to thank the sponsors for the channel, the supporters who were listed at the beginning. Please do follow this channel as well as that is Semigog, as well as a Safer Space. You can do that on Twitter. You can do that on Odyssey. You can do it on Gab. You can do it on Minds. You can do it on Telegram and here on YouTube as well. Thank you very much. Let's see. I'll skip the other shilling at the outset so that we can jump in and make the best use of Conscious Caracal's time. As I understand it, sir, this Afriforum report has been updated, and it contains all sorts of very, very interesting information, though I'm sorry to say it is also in many respects disturbing. I suppose that most of the people watching now are aware that in addition to, of course, being interesting in and of itself, South Africa should also be something that we ourselves maintain awareness of outside that country, simply because it is rich in examples of the problems that we are all likely to soon be facing if we're not already. But happily as well, it's rich in examples of solutions with some of the work that Afriforum has been doing. I just want to tell all our watchers, Afriforum is a serious organization that's doing really, really good things, as best I can tell, being, of course, an outsider. And so I follow its activities as well as things in South Africa closely, because it's an example of ways in which people can actually organize, work together, push back, develop parallel institutions, and all sorts of other things that hopefully will become more apparent as Ernst tells us more about what's going on there. So that by way of introduction. Thanks for being here, Ernst. And what do you have for us today?
Well, thank you very much for the platform, Oliver. It's for me, when it comes to this report, I mean, you mentioned there, it's not the first one. We published one in 2020 that I also contributed to. I was one of the writers of that report, and that was the first The World Must Know report that documented, I think, everything since 1994 in regards to minority community persecution in South Africa. It was a massive report, and Afriforum took that on our liaison to the United States that year, and we talked to the likes of Tucker Carlson about it and handed him a copy of the report as well. And that's also when my colleague Aaron Roots appeared on Tucker Carlson's show in 2020. That report was part of that tour. Then in this year, I can't remember what exactly happened. I just got the idea that I remembered we did this report, and it's now been 2 years, and so much has happened in those 2 years that we should actually be writing another report. And most of my colleagues that helped me with the first report were now busy with their own other campaigns. Afriforum in just 2 years had already become a lot bigger. So I knew I couldn't just ask a bunch of people to band together, get in the organization to write another report. So I said, well, that I'm going to just do it myself. So I used some elbow grease, burned the midnight oil, and wrote this extensive report as a follow-up. And all I really want to achieve with this is exactly what the first one achieved very successfully, and that is to really document many of these, as you rightly said, disturbing things going on in South Africa. Because the thing is, I mean, you'll notice this in your own country as well. Horrible pieces of legislation and breaking news stories of just clown world will happen on a daily basis, but then the next day, the next story or scandal breaks, and then everyone forgets about the previous one. And sometimes when people are reminded about something that happened a year ago, it's almost like they hear it again for the first time. And what you really need to do then is take all these examples, all these stories, and put them in one place. And then the picture really starts getting a lot more clear. And I mean, like I said, this will apply to your own country as well. Many of the bizarre and just disturbing things happening in your news cycle get lost in the news cycle. It gets lost in the white noise of the news cycle. And only when it is all put in one place does the real severity and the real level of how disturbing it is become clear. And that's what I wanted to do with this report, because the first report did it so well, is document everything that happened since 1994 to 2020. I wanted to document what happened in the times of COVID regarding many of those chapters in the previous report. So just some examples of the chapters are racially discriminatory laws in times of COVID and beyond, expropriation without compensation, also riots, unrest, and looting during July 2021. Then Caracal and the Kill the Boer trial of Julius Malema and the EFF, targeting minority heritage. And then the last one, continued decline of Afrikaans language rights and education. And the thing about this report as well is, and you'll see if you go read it, every single instance that is documented is also meticulously sourced. So there's nothing in there that's just, well, I heard this from the kids on the bus and that's my source. No, every one of them has at least one source that is solid, that you can go check for yourself. So even if you read something in the report and you're like, that can't be real, that politician couldn't have said that heinous thing, you can just click on the footnotes and it takes you directly to the source of where it was documented. So just maybe final thought there. That's what I wanted to achieve with this report, again, is to document, to chronicle everything that's happening and to provide people with that type of source. Because I know the vast majority of your listeners, my subscribers, my followers, don't have the time to go look up all this stuff. They don't. If they get into a debate or they get into a fight with someone about a topic like this, they can't just go search up all these examples. But if they have this source, they can just go check, find it quickly, Control F, got it, and be on their way. And I'd like to continue doing that in the future, creating more sources like this through Afriforum that people can just use, very easy access, and where everything is there, that they can get the truth out there about what's going on in South Africa without any hassle at all.
Yeah, it's almost as though you build the structure of documentation stone by stone, and it creates this solid mass that it's hard for people to pretend is not there. And it certainly is there. I have read that report. I suggest everybody who's watching, who's interested, look in the description below. You will find there links for Afriforum, for Ernst's channel, for the report itself and its PDF version. I have read it. There's a lot of information in it, but happily it is quite concise. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it now from Conscious Caracal, but for those who are interested, over on his channel, he's breaking it down in segments there as well. So if anybody wants further information, anything else that might not have been covered today, you can find it in the report there, as well as his breakdown sequentially. Also, lots of other great content there. I was just watching the clip you recently did on with your guest on the gun violence there, and the way in which it's being used as a pretext to shift things. And you can, listeners can even head over there to learn about, what do they call it? Zama Zama.
The illegal miners in South Africa.
Yes. Now, I don't want to change the subject, but I did want to point out that there's a lot over there for people to check out, and I follow the channel with interest.
Yeah, that's actually, I think, an overlap where a lot of your listeners, that will be I think a fascinating rabbit hole for them as well. I mean, in America, the whole illegal immigration and border security debate's already a hot topic. But in South Africa, there's just as rich a debate and as interesting a topic here and specifically now in the past few years, heating up regarding border security, regarding illegal immigration into South Africa. Massive rabbit hole that you can get down into. And you can start off by actually go watching my colleague Jog Broederyk's documentary called Open Borders, Zimbabwe, South Africa. You can just search that in YouTube and you'll find it. You'll see it's on the Afriforum channel. That'll give you an idea about what's going on in South Africa and the border issue. But yeah, anyway, like you said, it's a completely different tangent. But again, it links up to what you said earlier, where South Africa is so far removed from the US geographically, but there's overlap there, and you can get so many interesting insights from a completely different angle on issues that are the same.
Indeed, often depressingly so. But again, there is the light at the end of the tunnel that happily does not appear to be an oncoming train, which is that Afriform has had considerable success. Again, I sound like a broken record, but you know, it's a fortifying experience to see that organization and consistent organized effort can yield positive results, and in fact it's doing so. So let's come back to this report. I understand that there are a number of examples in it, a disturbing, as we said, number of examples in it of the way in which racial discrimination, or different standards for different minority groups are a problem there. So I'd ask you to cover a few of them for us, or whichever ones you think are most important. But I'm particularly interested, if you can just throw some mention of it in there, how, of course, how this affects the white minority, or the white minorities in South Africa. But I'd also be interested to hear how it affects some of these other minorities as well, because one of the things, of course, you are very well aware of this, but for our listeners who aren't, the situation in South Africa is in no respects simple. And while there are a number of parallels that we can draw between places, for example, like the United States and South Africa, simple black-white divides fall apart there. As far as I can understand it, because the situation on the ground there is much, much more complex. So perhaps you can tell us more about these discriminatory policies, but also share some of that complexity that I just mentioned that many in the United States will not perhaps be aware of.
So I think let's start with at the beginning in regards to the racially discriminatory legislation. The funny thing is, in 1994, the ANC took the apartheid government's racial categorizations and they just copy and pasted it. So for all their haranguing about racial discriminatory laws are wrong, racial categorization is wrong, they literally just took the racial categorization from the previous government or the previous regime, copy and pasted it. So that's white, black, Indian, other, colored. That's where it starts. Then every single form that I fill out, a government form, sometimes even private sector forms, I have to designate my race. I can't say, there's always a box that I have to tick where I have to say what race I am. And often that is for Black economic empowerment purposes. Now, Black economic empowerment is just a blanket term for these racially discriminatory policies, where it's just the ideology of representation. You know this to a certain extent in the US already. I saw a tweet just yesterday or the day before about the ACLU fighting now for the university's right to have racially discriminatory criteria for when people get admitted to university. And I mean, that's self-Africanization. That's just the United States looking at South Africa and they're like, oh, well, I'll copy that homework. I'll change it a little bit so the teacher doesn't see that I copied. But thanks for the tip. And you saw this during COVID as well. And this is what I actually documented here. One of the first stories that I documented in the report. And what I find so shocking, I didn't name this in the report because it's a bit outside of the focus, but what I found shocking was that this case, I'll outline it now, but almost a carbon copy of it happened just a month or so later in the US. And I made a joke that the US is just going to take these race-based COVID policies and they're going to copy and paste them from South Africa. And then the Biden administration literally did that. So the example that I want to use is the Tourism Relief Fund. So that was set up in 2020, 200 million rand tourism relief fund to help micro, medium, so small businesses that are really struggling due to, I'm not going to say due to the pandemic, due to the lockdowns, because that's more accurate. And these businesses can then apply for assistance from this relief fund if they're on the brink, they're like on the brink of going under. And then from the beginning, people noticed, but this relief fund has a racial criteria component to it. So literally what it does is let's say a business owner goes to the government, he applies for this tourism relief fund, he's in the tourism industry, small business is going down, it's going to be the end for him next week. Goes to the government, asks for assistance from this tourism relief fund set up specifically for his situation. Government looks him up and down and says, sorry, you're too white, bruh. I hope you have some other skills. I hope you're good at coding. Learn to code, because your business is not going to make it and we're not going to help you. So this tourism relief fund was discriminating with businesses that are going under and telling them, no, you can't get this assistance or this relief. You're too white. And the silver, there is a silver lining to this story though, and that is that Afriforum took this tourism relief fund to court, and the first court case, it was we lost that court case, then we took it on appeal, and then we won. Then we got this tourism relief fund declared unlawful. So we put a stop to that, but it shouldn't be like that in the first place. But that also shows the power of creating organizations like Afriforum that can actually take on this type of legislation. One more example, and then you can we can get further into some other this topic of racially discriminatory laws. But another is one of the most. This is even worse than the previous one. This is like outright just evil. The first one is evil. This one is just despicably evil. And that is the case of the Tears Foundation. So the Tears Foundation is a organization, a non-profit organization in South Africa that fights gender-based violence. And the government made funds available for these types of organizations. And they applied for those funds. And the government told them, your management is too white. Too many, statistically, too many white people in your management. We can't help you. So just to put that into perspective, non-profit organization fighting gender-based violence, helping victims of gender-based violence, goes to the government, and the government, their racial agenda is much more important to them than the even helping a non-profit organization like that. So, but there's also a silver lining to that story, and that is that Afriforum is assisting the Tears Foundation in fighting this discrimination against them. That case is still ongoing, so I don't have a result there yet to really give you a nice ending to the story. That's still ongoing, but it will be. You can just keep an eye on my social media, and I will update people if we win and what happens in that case. But yeah, like I said, those are the two examples that I think really cements what's going on here. But I remember you asked also other communities being discriminated against. Robert Daigen, actually, that you mentioned earlier, will be able to paint you a very detailed picture of how, for example, colored South Africans are being discriminated against by the government when it comes to housing, when it comes to service delivery. There's some heinous stuff going on there, and that's his field of knowledge. He has all the details there. But that's one of the examples how other minority communities in South Africa that are, let's put it bluntly, that are not black enough in the government's eyes, how they are also discriminated against. And you see this with Black economic empowerment policy as well, with employment, where the government is following a very strict racial representation model. So yeah, maybe let's use this as an example. So the colored population, well, I always have to clarify this. It wastes a lot of time, but people need to understand, because there's always people that don't know this. Colored is a term for an ethnic group in South Africa they're not the descendants of the Bantu, so they're not related to the Xhosa or the Zulu or the Sothos or any of the black cultures. They are the descendants of either mixed race people or Cape Malays that were brought here as slaves by the British, or the descendants of the Khoi and San, the original nomadic tribes of South Africa. And they form the ethnic community called the coloreds, and they are very highly concentrated, almost exclusively in the Western Cape province. So that's the western tip of the country. So that's going to be important for my example. So how racially discriminatory policy doesn't just is not just aimed at or discriminating against the white minority, but also against other minority communities as well. If, let's say, the government opens some type of employment scheme, or a branch of a state-owned enterprise opens in Cape Town or in the Western Cape, when they are employing people in the Western Cape, where a very small minority of people are black and the vast majority are colored and white, they are going to use national demographics as their representative criteria. So they're opening let's say, a state-funded business in an area that is, I would say, 85% non-black, so colored and white. They're still going to require that business has, I think, 51% black employees, and in the management as well. So that's how other communities are also discriminated against through this legislation. So, but you need to keep that in mind, because if you look at South Africa and you think it's just this well, excuse the pun, that it's just black and white, it's not going to make sense to you. But when you understand that there's many of these other racial communities there, minority communities, that are also being discriminated against for very complex political reasons, specifically when it comes to housing and service delivery from the government, then the picture starts becoming even more disturbing, but also a lot more insightful about how this stuff works in a multicultural society. Because I mean, in the United States is also not a country that's just black and white. So when you start seeing how this type of legislation works in a country that has very strict categories of Indian, colored, white, black, then you're going to get a little bit of a glimpse of how it will probably be modeled in your country as well, if it were to fully South Africanize and also start using very strict and rigid racial categorization as we have here.
Yeah, I certainly noticed there was some aspect of that, I think, reflected in the riots that were happening. I want to say KwaZulu Natal, but I cannot remember precisely. But there was a big issue with rioting going on, and if I remember correctly, colored communities, as they would be called, were basically left to defend themselves, and so. As indeed perhaps other ones were as well. So it does seem as though, if I got all that right, of course, which is always a question mark, it does seem as though this is not something that strictly affects whites, though I would imagine that they are a favored target simply because they're easy to sort of call out as the quote unquote oppressor.
Oh yeah, rhetorically, it's absolutely a fan favorite for the ANC and the ruling regime. And yeah, no, you're right. That's one of the other sections that I cover, and that is the riots and unrest in 2021 in July. And I mean, this is something that gripped the international community about what was going on there in South Africa. But exactly what I said earlier, when it comes to this report, I wanted to shine a light on the things that were not being focused on. So even though the riots and the unrest were being focused on by the international community and the South African media, naturally, they weren't focusing on all the aspects of it. And one of the aspects of that unrest and of that looting, that horrific episode in South Africa, was the violent rhetoric that was spreading online and on the streets, and that was being used against specifically minority communities. And you were correct there. One of these minority communities that was particularly targeted was the Indian South African community. So there's a very large Indian South African community in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. You'll notice now, just as I described in the previous section, the colored community is concentrated in the Western Cape. Indian minority community concentrated in KwaZulu-Natal. That's kind of how South Africa is. That's how the puzzle fits together. So KwaZulu-Natal was one of the provinces where most of the rioting and unrest happened. And connected to that were all these disgusting narratives of, yes, that's because the minority communities are hoarding all the wealth, they exploit all the poor workers in that province, and that's why this is happening. You should target them, you should attack them, you should target their neighborhoods. I saw a lot of this rhetoric personally on social media, and there was a lot of it that I didn't even see at the time that I had to go look up when I was writing this report. Got some first-hand accounts of people also getting sent all these Indian friends of mine living in KwaZulu-Natal, seeing this violent rhetoric online as well. Very disgusting stuff. And then naturally the white community in South Africa will also, to a lesser extent, also rhetorically targeted on social media. Again, the same type of narrative, anti-minority narrative there. And the other thing that happened then was the fact that because the South African police force were just completely firstly caught off guard and didn't have the resources to be able to deal with this massive level of unrest and chaos and looting, they couldn't protect neighborhoods and help innocent civilians being targeted by just rampant out of control crime during that episode. So communities banded together to defend their communities, their neighborhoods themselves. They put up checkpoints, and it was really something to behold. Now there's two sides to that coin. There were community members that didn't do this lawfully, that broke the law in regards to use of firearms. Actually, there were murders as well that happened, and that's definitely something that should not be encouraged. But the vast majority of these communities came together and within the parameters of the law kept their neighborhoods safe and protected the people in their streets and in their neighborhoods. But then what happened was, then the media and many in the commentariat in South Africa and many on social media started smearing these communities that came together to defend themselves as, oh, they're racist, they're doing it because they hate black people, they're doing it because they are protecting their privilege, and all these very disgusting narratives, again linking back to that first narrative that I said that pretty much was the main anti-minority narrative, and that is that all these riots are happening because of minority exploitation. And I mean, you know the works. So that's pretty much one of the aspects of those July riots that I wanted to focus on, that wasn't focused on in the media. I didn't see anyone really covering that aspect of it. It's one of the shorter sections in the report because there isn't really much analysis needed. I've just found as many sources as I could documenting this type of violent rhetoric towards minorities, communities in South Africa. But it is nonetheless, I wanted again to create this source so people can go check for themselves and can use this report as a source if they want to talk on any other platform about these types of incidents.
Yeah, thank you. It's certainly helpful to form a better picture. And in pursuit of that, I certainly, again, I don't want to turn you away from moving on to some of these other very, very
no, don't
interesting.
worry about it. If you have any other comments or anything to add, it's your channel. You can go into it. I mean, it's we've got a lot of time.
Okay. Well, yeah, and do let me know when you are approaching a limit on your time, because I know the time difference is vast between us. But I did want to ask again, not to cut you off from moving on to the next interesting points. But I'm trying to figure out the best way to frame this question. This fits into what I was talking about earlier. The picture is much, much more complex in South Africa than in the United States. However, and so the first question was, are other minorities affected? Yes, it appears they are. The KwaZulu-Natal riots being just one example. If I remember correctly, maybe the Khoi people, if I'm even saying that right, have their own issues. But I'm outside my depth in terms of the way that the ethnic groups in South Africa break down. But here, I guess, is the next question. It seems that to a certain extent, these policies can be called anti-white, insofar as whites are favored as sort of the easiest target, right? The one that is least,
like I said, the fan favorite target. It's the go-to one. It's the easiest one. I mean, there's this conspiracy theory in South Africa that politicians like to cite called white monopoly capital. So they always use this as almost like leftists always use the term dog whistle, but this is a literal dog whistle of pretty much saying whites just control the entire economy, control all the means of production. They control the governments and politicians themselves. We are just behind everything that's wrong in the country, and people just blame WMC, white monopoly capital. So yeah, you're completely correct. It's the favorite thing go-to of politicians, specifically when they are in a political bind or when they're pushed into a corner. They like to lash out towards the white community. But we've seen now in recent years they're broadening their targets, because the organizations like Afriforum have started protecting, firstly, pushing back against a lot of this rhetoric. So then the government thought, well, maybe if a lot of these politicians thought that Afriforum is just going to stand up for Afrikaners, so we're going to start targeting some other minority communities, but we will support those communities as well as they in their fight against this type of just very heinous type of rhetoric. And this is not even on the same level as what you get in the United States. I mean, we're going to get into that. The case of Julius Malema and Caracal is probably one of the most shocking court cases I've ever attended, and it will probably be one of the most shocking court cases I will attend for a long while. And their anti-white hatred is just on display fully. It's unadulterated, and yeah, but we'll definitely get into that.
Yeah, Mr. Brr Pa, Brr Pa Pa. Yeah, a fine gentleman. Let me just see if I can get to this last little bit then before perhaps we turn to that subject, since it certainly fits here. I guess what I'm after is, again, the black and white picture is insufficient. It's an explanatory model that just doesn't have proper application in South Africa. So I guess to form a better picture, both for myself and for listeners who are not familiar with this, is it possible to see sort of two other directions in play? Because here's a third point. I've mentioned this before. I've asked about it, and I'm beginning to get my head around it. Apparently, Black economic empowerment counterintuitively covers East Asian Chinese people, for example, who are South African citizens,
yes.
Right? But here's the question. That's one example of a way in which these policies simply sort of remove any concern about black or white in terms of it actually being black or white.
It's just a friend-enemy thing.
Exactly. It's a friend-enemy thing. And so here, in terms of that Schmittian distinction, I wonder if you could shed light in two areas. One, in terms of the black groups, I know that there are minority groups among the blacks who are not Bantu, as far as I understand it. And so they get the short end of the stick fairly consistently. And so I wonder how these policies are used just in terms of friend-enemy distinctions among the black populations in terms of reward or punishment. And then the next angle, kind of taking it from the other direction, is, do we see distinction in how these discriminatory policies are applied among whites as regards whether or not they happen to be of British descent or Afrikaner?
So yeah, firstly, I think that is a very important point about the friend-enemy distinction when it comes to these types of legislation. A very superficial understanding of it would be, it's just pro-black, anti-white discrimination, but that's not what it is. It's pro-ANC loyalist discrimination, anti-white discrimination. So it discriminates against all white people, but it only discriminates in the benefit of a small elite group of black people in South Africa. So what you're seeing is, the track record speaks for itself of black economic empowerment policies. What it is used for is twofold. Firstly, what it was used for from the beginning up till now is to fill every facet of the government apparatus with party loyalists. So it's not about transforming the government apparatus from white to black, but transforming it from majority white to majority ANC loyalist. and the ANC connected. That's the first step, because then you control the entire state apparatus, and there will be no dissent, because then you can just tighten that tap, and then it's gone, and then you can just kick someone off the gravy train. So the first goal of the ANC through this was what they call cadre deployment, and this is something that you're going to have to become very familiar with, because this is a key part of South Africanization, is cadre deployment, which means the deployment of party loyalists into every little nook and cranny and every corner of the state's apparatus, from every department to onto every little level up until the very most insignificant level, to give the party full control of the entire state leviathan. That was the first thing that BEE, or racially discriminatory legislation, was used as a cover for that cadre deployment. The second thing that it was used for is for the corruption gravy train. So the first use of cadre deployment was to gain power, to gain control over the state apparatus after apartheid. The second goal was to enrich the friends and family and the politicians themselves to a level that is almost incomprehensible. Building palaces, building mansions, buying extravagant new cars and vehicles every month. I mean, these politicians are on a galaxy level wealthy, filthy wealthy, immorally wealthy, and that's all done through the policy of Black economic empowerment, where you say, well, we have this a government tender going out, or this government contract that we need to give to someone because of Black economic empowerment legislation. We need to give it to a Black person or a Black-owned business. Who's that Black-owned person, that Black-owned business or Black person going to be? A friend or family member of an ANC politician every single time. That's how it works. It's Black economic empowerment has as much to do with Black economic empowerment in the broad sense as the National People's Republic, Democratic People's Republic of North Korea is democratic. It's used as a cover for, firstly, gaining control of every facet of government, and secondly, enriching onto a mind-blowing level the friends, family, and the politically connected of the ANC's top politicians, but also on lower level politicians connected and loyal to the ANC as well. That's what it's used for. So a mistake would be when you look at these policies and say, oh, they're just ethno-nationalists. That's why they're doing it. They just want to benefit Black people at the expense of white people. But that's not true. They're doing it to, firstly, solidify the party's grip and control over the state, and secondly, to benefit their allies, their friends, and to harm their enemies. So it's absolutely not, it's not like the ANC are doing it because they're Black supremacists or because they just want to help Black people at the expense of white people. They're doing it because, for cynical reasons, because it's a power game, it's a power tool, and they're using it to tighten their grip over the state, and also to help their friends and to hurt their enemies.
And didn't we see a bit of that going on with that rioting that we just mentioned, insofar as, if I'm remembering correctly, some of this played out in terms of tribal divisions, perhaps I want to say with the Zulu and the former government of Zuma versus the current position of Ramaphosa. I don't want to turn you away because I'm also interested.
Yeah, no, but that's a very important aspect. I think I've touched on this on a previous episode that I've done when I was a guest on your channel as well, but it's a very important point. The factional fights within the ANC are often culture-based. So, for example, look at the previous president, Jacob Zuma. He was a Zulu. He was I would actually go as far as to say a Zulu nationalist. He was a culture man. So what he did was, when he gained power over the ANC and when he became president, he filled the ANC with Zulu loyalists, people that are loyal to him. And his support base is in KwaZulu-Natal, where the majority of Zulus live. And when Cyril Ramaphosa became president, he is a vendor. He's not a Zulu. He started purging a lot of these Zulu appointments again within the ANC and within the government. So there's this massive cultural battle going on as well. And not necessarily racially discriminatory policies don't necessarily play into this battle, but it's a facet that needs to be understood, because you're going to see factions in South Africa fighting, and they're both black or they're both white. You not understand what's going on. You say, "Oh, wait, there's a cultural element to it going on." But specifically within the ANC, you're seeing a lot of cultural faction forming, and cultural playing a very big role in who's loyal to who and who is serving who. And I mean, the best example of where this happened was with the previous administration under Jacob Zuma, where he filled the party with loyalists to himself, but they're all Zulu as well, like himself.
So yeah, this just goes, I suppose, to underscore further the fact that there's nothing simple about this, and in terms of the ethnic and cultural picture, and in terms of the shifting power landscape. But I'm glad you brought up the Schmittian friend-enemy distinction earlier, because that does seem to be the kind of Occam's razor here. That the one thing that you can count on is that these policies are applied cynically and consistently in pursuit of power, and that any too facile or quick attempt to draw the lines in terms of how the power blocks map out is likely to fail. I wonder, though, can we turn to this business of, for example, among the whites, whether or not we see distinctions made, for example, about how these policies are applied, or perhaps we don't, vis-a-vis Afrikaner peoples or Boers, and for example, people of English descent. Is this another area where we can see that white isn't strictly white, that it subdivides further, or what can you tell us about this?
No, the distinction comes in again, friend enemy. If you're white in South Africa and a friend of the party, they will bend the rules or they will use black economic empowerment and racially discriminatory legislation to help you. So they will give, for example, black economic empowerment certificates to businesses that don't necessarily fill the racial criteria of that the policy stipulates, but they're friends of the party, or they've done favors for the party. So they'll the most common example of this is where a corporate board is just filled with ANC politicians as board members or as stakeholders in the corporate structure, under the guise of black economic empowerment. But it's just a state corporate relationship, and often that's how they apply this legislation to help white South Africans as well, the right type of white South Africans that are friends of the party. So it really is not about just racial lines. It's also again, it's really simple. It's friend enemy when it comes to who these policies benefit and who these policies hurt. But broadly, it does have a racial component of broadly discriminating against white people and targeting white people in that regard. Just a final thought there. I think what's also something that needs to be pointed out is when it comes to how these policies are used, not just in the state sphere, but in the corporate sphere as well, where it's not a case of the government going to corporate South Africa and saying you're going to apply these racial criteria or else. It's a case of corporate South Africa going to the government and saying, how high should I jump, sir? They don't need, there's no coercion from what I can see. It's corporate South Africa is one of them. It's very spineless in this regard. And we saw it during the past few years specifically, where they just, it's like that concept of the cathedral to a large extent, where people are just in lockstep without there being any collusion or conspiracy directly or any coercion directly. They just know this is what I need to do to gain favor with the government, and this is what I need to do to get this relationship going. And as I said in my video on South Africanization, in South Africa, corruption, that state corporate relationship has almost become mandatory, where you're not going to be able to have a clean relationship with the government if you're a corporate. You're relationship with the government is going to have to almost involve corruption or loyalty or favors towards a faction or an individual within the ruling party. That's just how it is. Like I said, corruption has become mandatory if you want any type of connection or relationship or deal between the government and your private venture. That's just the reality.
Well, yeah, it just seems, to be the reality of corruption and power politics, and I guess this late stage sort of apocalyptic descent that we all seem to be enjoying. Are there other examples that stand out for you as regards the report that you want to share? I know you talked about these particularly nasty ones with the Tears Foundation and the rest, the way in which the pandemic funds were distributed or not. What else stands out for you?
No, in regards to the sections that we've already discussed, I think I've covered them as much as I wanted to. There's a lot more there, but your listeners can go read for themselves. But yeah, the next section, the Caracal and the Kill the Boer trial one is it's a detailed one, but that's the most shocking one. I think that's the one that has the highest priority that people need to know about. So I'm comfortable with moving on to that one.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about it. Now, if I remember correctly, this was actually a case. This was a case that Afriforum brought against Malema. Am I correct in that?
Mm.
You're not just
So
covering that, but this was y'all's
yeah,
project.
yeah, I'm intimately involved with that case. But maybe just the context first. So I think some of your listeners might have seen this happen, where in 2020 there was a brutal farm murder in South Africa of a young man called Brendan Horner. He was 21 years old. He was a farm manager, and he was beaten to a pulp, tied to a pole, and murdered brutally. And his body was discovered the next day. And the thing is, that then sparked many protests, or a big protest in the town of Caracal where this happened. And the first protest happened, and then the second one, the EFF showed up as a counter protest. Now, I'll leave that up to you to decide when you're going to a protest against farm murders what a counter protest is protesting for. You can make up your own mind. So they go there as their counter protest, and they're out there outside the courthouse where the suspected murderers of Brendan Horner are being tried. And the EFF supporters sing "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer" outside of the courthouse, while the murdered Brendan Horner's parents are sitting inside the courthouse. And that's on video as well. And then Afriforum took Julius Malema and EFF to court for their supporters singing the song. And also, we showed in court Julius Malema doing his speech at Caracal, where he also denied that any white farmers or farmers are being murdered in South Africa. And he's not the first South African politician to say exactly this. The first South African politician to deny that there are any murdering of farmers or white farmers in South Africa was actually the current president himself, Cyril Ramaphosa. He said this in 2018 when he was at a Bloomberg event in New York City. He outright deny that there are any murders of farmers or white farmers in South Africa. No, it was a disgusting lie, and the South African media rushed to his defense. The very next day, opinion piece by the biggest media corporation in South Africa, News 24, came out. I think it was farm murders comment by the president, what the president actually meant. Like, it's a blatant lie. There's no way you can spin it, but they attempted. But it shows you again, there's just as in the US, there's a very close relationship, definitely between the media and the state. And then we went to court. Then it was the Afriforum versus Julius Malema and EFF trial. That entire trial you can go find on YouTube. If you just type in Afriforum versus EFF day 1, day 2, day 3, you'll find it. It's all there, but it's long, it's hours. So
But
The
I've seen some highlights, if I remember correctly. Did you put those together?
Yes, so there's one section of I mean, the entire trial is fascinating, and I went there. I attended the entire trial. I mean, I'm there in the background. You can see me on the stream, but the thing is, the most important section of that trial was the cross examination of Julius Malema, and that section I documented in full in the report. That's what I focused on, because again, before we get into that section of the report, the cross examination of Julius Malema, he said, we're going to get into what he said, but the South African media just completely focused on absolutely irrelevant things. They didn't focus on his disgusting rhetoric. They didn't focus on one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard a politician say in my life. We'll get to that now. They focused on comments like making it the headline, Julius Malema says he will be president one day. That's not the story. That's not what not what needs to be focused on. But that's what they did. But yeah, before I create too much suspense in your amongst your audience, we can start getting into some of the heinous things that were said at that court case.
Yeah, I definitely recommend that everybody go at least check out the footage of his cross examination, because, well, how do I say this? You're about to get into some of the things that were actually mentioned, but before you
Yeah.
do so, I want to emphasize that this is all on camera in the context of a
Yes.
courtroom, with him being
Under
asked under oath to respond to these things. And in terms of documenting things for the future, in terms of building a case, in terms of patiently doing what needs to be done to affect change, it just struck me as, no matter what happened with the coverage, because you can expect them to attempt to worm tongue it, you know, it just struck me as an enormous success to do the things necessary to put the man there in front of the cameras in a courtroom under oath and get his answers, squirmy as they were in many respects, on film. So definitely check this out. It struck me as an enormous success for Afriforum, and I hope to, and for everyone who's being screwed by all of this going on in South Africa. So I definitely recommend people check it out, and I hope for further such successes. But having set the stage for it, what sort of things did our gentle friend have to say in his own defense?
Well, Oliver, what you say there is exactly what we wanted to achieve. One of the main goals of that court case is to put on record the thoughts of this monster of Julius Malema and the EFF, what they stand for, that it's just there documented. And yeah, we got more than we bargained for. So the other thing that I also did, there is a stream on my channel called Analysis EFF versus Julius Malema case. I think it's, if you just go on my channel, you'll find it there. If you sort the videos by most watched, it should be in the top 5, where I go through all the clips. But the thing about the report is that every comment that I document has a timestamp. So you go to the link in the footnotes to the day of the court that was all recorded, and you can just go to the timestamp to get the clip of him saying exactly, and get all the context of him saying all these things. So firstly, I'm not going to get to everything because there is a lot, but I'll get to the I think the most disturbing stuff. So when Julius Malema was asked whether white people could be victims in South Africa, he answered no, not at the current moment. No, 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 no. That was I think on the first day, that was the standout thing. The second day of his cross-examination was when the real, like, spine tinglingly disturbing stuff, like gut wrenching stuff that gives you like a cold feeling when you hear it happen. So firstly, I think this happened on the first day of cross-examination. The Afriforum team, and I was there with them, when we exited the court, the EFF supporters were out there and they sang to our faces, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer." And we got it on tape and we showed it in the court as well. And that's on my channel. If you go look on my channel, there's a video called EFF chanting "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer" outside Johannesburg court. You'll see it there. It's all documented. So we put that in as part of the case as well. So then what happened on the second day, Julius Malema was presented with a case of a mother and daughter who were tortured to death, and the words "kill the Boer" were written in blood on the wall of their house. He then dismissed it by calling it mere criminality, and he testified that he could not say whether racism was a motive in this particular murder. Then next, when referring to past comments of Malema, where he said, "We are not calling for the slaughtering of white people, at least for now." So he said this a few years back, and he was asked about it. Julius Malema was then asked whether, and this is like I said earlier, what I'm going to tell you now is one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard a politician say in my life, and this is under oath even, so it's even worse. There's a clip of it on YouTube, so you'll be able to find it if you don't believe me. But this is the leader of the third largest party in the country. He has millions of followers on Twitter and on across social media. And this is what he said. So Malema was asked whether he would pledge under oath that he would never call for the slaughtering of white people. Malema responded, firstly, that he could easily do so. And then Afriforum's advocate pulled a masterstroke because then he put him on the spot immediately. So then our advocate asked them, "Make that pledge then. Now, here's your opportunity. Do it now." And then Malema just immediately refused. So he says, I'll do that gladly. And then the advocate says, "Okay, do it now." And then he refuses. So when Malema was asked whether it could be him in the future who would indeed make such a call for the slaughtering of white people, he testified that he might call for the slaughtering of white people in the future. He couldn't rule out the possibility. So this is a South African politician, member of parliament, leader of the third largest party, millions of followers on Twitter, can't say under oath, "I will never call for the slaughtering of an entire group of people." Can't rule it out. Sorry, guys, can't do it. How many newspapers do you think had that as the headline? One.
Oh, one. I'm
Just
surprised.
one. There was one, but the newspaper is called This South African, and they actually do some good coverage on farm murders as well. So I wasn't surprised that they did it. But out of all the dozens of newspapers that South Africa has, only one had a headline about that. The rest, all their headlines were Julius Malema says he's going to be president one day, or Julius Malema being cross-examination by advocate that looks like Jan van Riebeeck. This is what the South African. There's a horrific clip on YouTube by, I think it's ENCA, another big media house in South Africa, that I think it's called Julius Malema Highlights or Julius Malema top 10 moments or something from the court case. And they're all just fluff quotes, all his funny jokes, all his little smiles, all his little off-the-cuff remarks. Nothing there on him, all the things that I've mentioned here. So that's the thing. So that's one of the reasons also why I wanted to in-depth document this court case. Because, well, firstly, I was in the privileged position where I was there in person. And then I had to go rewatch the entire cross-examination again because I need to get these quotes perfectly right. I can't make a mistake here when I'm directly quoting him. And because the case is ongoing as well. And the other thing is, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be playing journalist. I shouldn't be the guy documenting all this stuff and exposing it to the world. The journalists, the media should be doing this, but they're all fawning over, "Oh, look at this joke that Julius Malema made during the court case. He's such a little rascal. He's such a silly man." But he's sitting there and he can't promise that he'll never call for the slaughtering of an entire group of people. It doesn't register. It's as if it didn't happen. And the most striking thing that happened was when I did that stream where I analyzed the cross-examination, many of my own subscribers were in the live chat saying, "I didn't know. I couldn't believe what you just told me. I didn't know he said this. I can't believe he said this." We just demonstrated that, yeah, if I and other alternative media YouTube channels didn't go out of our way to document what was happening in this court case. And if this court case was not on film and not on camera, the media would have just, nobody would have known about this. Nobody would have known about what he said under oath. Nobody would have known about these heinous comments. Everyone would have thought it just went brilliantly for him, and he just made jokes, and he was just a funny, wholesome man. But the reality is people were just completely unaware, because the media would very directly focusing on the things that didn't matter, while there was some, like I said, when he, maybe just the last comment there, when I was sitting there in the court, and when Julius Malema, when he said that he can't pledge under oath that he will never call for the slaughtering of white people, the court went silent. There was like a cold silence that fell over the court, and I think it was just shocked people, even people that are like on the fence in regards to the EFF and Julius Malema. I think they just couldn't believe what they were hearing. But yeah, that's, like I say, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to document this in such meticulous detail, because somebody had to fucking do it.
Well, I have a question for you here. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I hope you will entertain it. As I said, it seems to me that Afriforum has been particularly effective in terms of working together, approaching things in an organized way, and raising awareness, as they like to say, globally. Tucker Carlson appearances and things like that certainly stand out there as successes in that respect. But I have seen, based on a couple of the comments in the chat, that there do seem to be those who want to come in and talk about how, the time for passivity is over, and that we have to be racially conscious and all these sorts of things. And generally, let us say, seemingly doing everything necessary to fall into all the anti-white stereotypes that get used so successfully to smear white people in general. So essentially playing the caricatured role that has been set out for everyone in order to, well, I mean, there's no other way to say it, to stomp all over their own dicks and destroy the opportunity to do things outside the sphere of violence, which is to say, to do things in any way that might even be considered effective. But since such comments have been made, I sort of have two questions for you. How would you respond to them? And then perhaps on a related note, how do feds work in South Africa?
Okay, yeah, so I'll answer those respectively. The first one is in regards to taking action. I don't think there's any better example than, for example, Afriforum in regards to taking action. I mean, 150 branches all across the country that do everything from filling thousands of potholes every year, planting community vegetable gardens, planting trees, painting street signs, cleaning up communities. Then there's also over 150 neighborhood watches all across the country, keeping communities safe, patrolling every week, volunteers. They're not being paid. They're doing it because they want to and they have to. I think probably the largest neighborhood watch network on the continent. Just yesterday, a member phoned in and said their car was cloned. So there was another car with the same details as their car, and they can't renew their license because of this. So then we obviously their car was stolen. So then we tracked down the car, and using our Afriforum's network of security network that we've set up, and that's how you start building proper state-proof solutions, as you start building these types of setting up these structures and these networks, and that's how you do it.
And Afriforum did that within a matter of hours after the state had did nothing. And I do recall
the state has been, the government's been struggling for months to track down this car. Afriforum tracked down the car within hours.
Struggling, yes. And I do recall also that there was a rather large sort of convoy or caravan of neighborhood watches.
There was a national patrol that we did as well, where all the neighborhood watches did I think they identified one night, and then they all went out on patrol as well. So that's tens of thousands of volunteers all across the country. And during the riots as well, could all be mobilized to protect their communities during that time of crisis. And then also, we built our own theater, so for cultural preservation, where we can do all these cultural events. The Afriforum is part of the larger solidarity movement, which has built our own, firstly, established our own university called Academia, private university. We've also built a 300 million Rand technical college campus. You can go check on my channel. There's a video called Building Our Own Institutions, where I talk to someone from the solidarity movement about Soltech. And that's how you do it. That's how you start building real solutions. I'm very wary of that age-old comment of the time for talking is over, time for action. One of my favorite Afrikaner philosophers, N.P. van Wyk Louw, wrote about the idolization or the false god of the act, where where you turn action into a false god, where you just say, we just need to do something. Doesn't matter what. If you do something, then you're virtuous and righteous. No, whatever you do is very important. You can't just say do something. You have to have a plan. You have to, because sometimes doing nothing is better than doing something stupid. That's one of the biggest lessons you can learn from South Africa.
Almost always, it's more effective. Yes.
And he writes in his book on the idolization and the false god of the action, turning action into a false god. He kind of asks, and he says, if you're just saying someone needs to, quote unquote, do something, it ends up with a bunch of young men dead or in prison. And that's is that really put your community in a better place? And that's what Afriforum and Solidarity thought very hard about, and something that we think about on a daily basis. What action to take, and not to rush into anything, but to calculate on what we do and what we focus on and where we focus our funds into. And that's how we've been able to become such a force in South Africa that when anyone in the internationally does analysis on South Africa, they're almost forced to mention that there's this organization called Afriforum doing all these things that the government is supposed to be doing. And that's the thing. That's how you build solutions. It's not about all these lofty theories and ideologies. It's actually, you should be anti-ideology to some extent, because ideology can blind you, that you start thinking, well, in theory it should work, so we just should start doing over and over the same theory. But when you're living in a country like South Africa, you don't have the luxury of just doing the same theory over and over again. If your ideology doesn't work, you're going to have to do something else. So that's why I don't think I could even say, I wouldn't even call Afriforum an ideological organization, seeing as if some tenet of an ideology doesn't work, we're not going to keep doing it just because our ideology stipulates that we should. We're the tire hits the road organization. So if something works, we keep doing it. If it doesn't work, we discard it. That's the Africa mentality. You don't have the luxury of debating, but that's not real liberalism. Real liberalism hasn't been tried. That's not real conservatism. Real conservatism hasn't been tried. That's first world luxuries, talking about real monarchy hasn't been tried, real whatever ideology you want to follow. No, you need to start working on solutions that actually work. But that type of mentality only really kicks in when the literal shit hits the literal fan, when there's sewage running down your street, and when there are people just 2 streets away burning down businesses, and all types of chaos is breaking out. That's when people leave the little ideological luxury debates behind about X wasn't real X, and they start thinking, well, what the fuck do we need to do to actually make our community safe and to really get some solutions going? And that's our winning model, is that we do what works and discard what doesn't. If someone says that's not ideologically pure what you're doing, we don't really care. We do what works. It's the approach that served us well since the start of the organization, and it seems to be serving us even better in times where we see other organizations that are ideologically possessed or that are clinging to the theory, not really being able to produce real world results, because we don't live on a world made out of paper.
Indeed, indeed, and it seems now that the peanut gallery has shifted from the former set of complaints, which are absurd on the face of it, given what you just recounted in terms of on the ground results, actual results in building parallel institutions, in building networks that work for cooperation and all the rest. But now the question seems to have shifted entirely. I guess it's because the point is apparently to poke holes in you rather than actually offer substantive or
before we
useful
continue, sorry, Oliver, I remember you had a second question there as well, and that is
Indeed, I did.
what are feds and how do they work in South Africa? I just have a rule of thumb: any individual, or I don't even want to use the term organization, because a lot of these organizations have like non-existent support or astroturfed support. But any organization or individual that's like, again, going back to what I said earlier, there needs to be action. Someone needs to pick up a gun right now. I'm like, yeah, okay, Fed, nice try. Like any organization or individual that's trying to rile up young men to do something stupid, or to do something that's going to have them end up dead or in prison, that's someone or an organization that creates a lot of suspicion in my mind, and it should in a lot of people's minds. But I think that's the nice thing of living in a country like South Africa, where you live in an environment where results speak for themselves. So you can only have so much bravado and so much big speeches and riling up of people without connected actions before people start looking at you and saying, well, you're not doing anything. You're not producing any results. You are good at riling up people at a speech, but then you don't do anything. And that's in South Africa. It's very Darwinian in that sense, in regards to the solutions industry. If you can't provide the goods, if you can't show a track record of success, so the situation is not going to be very nice to you, because what happens is people are desperate for solutions. If you come to them and you say, I have a solution, and they say, okay, well, can you show me where your solution has been tried and it's successful? And you say, no, I don't have that yet, but dude, trust me, you're not going to get any support, and people are going to leave you behind. So that's one of the good things about the South African situation, is because we live in a time of necessity, because we live in a situation that mandates being serious, and being serious about results, and being serious about real world outcomes. Those types of people that are just big barkers but not big biters in regards to execution of their ideas, they don't really last very long. They kind of fall by the wayside when people realize these people aren't really serious about what they want to do. But yeah, just a final thought there. There are some organizations in South Africa that glow in the dark very, very clearly. But I mean, they're very obvious as well. It's often you can see their leadership is often comprised of ex-ANC people that have seen the light in their 50s or in their 40s. They just realized one day, oh, the ANC is evil. I'm going to create the polar opposite ideological organization now. I think that's one of the key indicators of an organization that glows in the dark, is when they have like all these figures in there that used to be like close within the ANC structures, and then just one day saw the light, and now they're based. Don't worry about it. And then also, of course, like I said earlier, the guys that are too eager to literally send young men to die and ruin their lives. That's also the other giveaway. Just people that just clearly want to use young men as cannon fodder in their own agenda. That's the other rule of thumb.
Yeah, I am definitely for activities that are pro-white, that don't break the law, that are sensible and constructive and productive. I think I've said enough about that, on my own time on the channel to back that. I'll just make two further observations. One is that I've visited a friend in prison for years, and had to show up there, every weekend and show my identification and walk through the metal detector and see the filth that they have no choice but to eat, the stuff that couldn't be sold, for example, for public school lunches that goes to the prisons. I've seen the noise that they have to deal with. I've seen the violence, at a remove, but by sitting in the visiting area and hearing about it, and not just from my friend. Prison sucks. And anybody who thinks that they're going to be effective in there, and would trade any potential effectiveness outside for sitting around feeling clever in there because they think they showed somebody something, isn't worth my time to ridicule. The second point that I would add is that I'm always suspicious of people wearing squirrel skins who barely have a couple of stitched together, poorly tanned squirrel hides to cover their balls, standing around telling people how to hunt lions. I'm not interested at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's move on from that. I'm certainly interested to hear other things that you might have to say from the report that haven't shown up yet.
Just a final thought there on something you said there. I think everything we've said there on that topic can be condensed in a meme of just this guy poking someone else with a stick and saying, like, go do something illegal. Come, you want to go do something that's breaking the law. That's going to save you and your family and your community. Those are the people you need to be very wary and suspicious of, because they're not the ones that are going to end up with the results or of the consequences of those actions that they're trying to encourage you to do. But yeah, so there are two other sections left in the report, and I think they can pretty much meld together in regards to what they cover. So the first one is the targeting of minority heritage, and the other one is the decline of Afrikaans language rights in education. So targeting of minority heritage, I mean, the whole statues thing that you've become very well acquainted with in the United States, that didn't start in the United States or even in the Western world. It started in South Africa. It started with the Rhodes Must Fall movement, where students in South Africa were protesting the statue of Cecil John Rhodes at the University of Cape Town campus, and they actually got it successfully removed. But that movement sparked the trend of statues being removed and being targeted. It started there in 2015 and then branched out into the rest of the Western world. Because the funny thing is, a lot of those radical students that are in that were in that movement got bursaries to go study abroad in Western countries in England and America. So you literally imported the people that hate your heritage and people that want to destroy your statues and the people that want to lobby and protest to destroy your country's heritage. It's actually sad, but there is a little bit of a funny, tragic comedy in it. That's what happened. And also the funny thing is, a lot of those Rhodes Must Fall students that protested that the statue of Cecil John Rhodes be removed got Rhodes scholarships that sends you to England to study there further. That is funded by I think it's called the Rhodes Foundation or something like that. So the guys whose statue you're protesting, his foundation is literally funding you to go study abroad. It's a funny world we live in. So that's what it's going on for a while, but in the past 2 years there have been more examples of minority heritage being targeted. One of the examples is the Louis Botha statue at the main entrance of the South African Parliament, where the statue was sprayed with red paint and also attacked with and vandalized with an angle grinder. Another very sad and infuriating example of how minority heritage is vandalized is how in April 2021, the 100-year-old bronze bust of General Koos de la Rey, who was an Afrikaner folk hero from the Anglo-Boer War, was stolen from his grave, and the grave was also vandalized. So you can't say, oh, it's just crime, they're just stealing the bust, that's all that's happening. Then why did they vandalize the grave as well? That doesn't match up. So yeah, and then the next section that I said, well, they kind of flow into each other, is the attack on Afrikaans specifically as a language. So firstly, you have the ruling party that has now very stubbornly for years refused to declare, or not declare, but to refer to Afrikaans as an indigenous language of South Africa. And there are a lot of people that are not with the ANC that make the same argument. Like, no, it's a Western language that's here in South Africa. It's not indigenous to South Africa. My only question then to those types of people is very simple. If it's not indigenous to South Africa, where is it indigenous to? They can't, they say, well, it's indigenous to the Netherlands. Nobody in the Netherlands speaks Afrikaans. It's indigenous to Germany. Nobody in Germany speaks Afrikaans. So that's my big question to people that say it's not an indigenous language. But that's one of the ways that the ruling party and institutions have attacked my own language. There have been reports as well of students at my old university, where I got my master's degree, Stellenbosch University, where students at their residences, which are like hostels on the university campus where students can live, where they were prohibited from speaking Afrikaans, even in private, on the lawn in front of the res, or even in private in their rooms. They were bullied and told by the authorities of the residents that they can't speak in their mother tongue. And this has happened at other universities. There are reports of it happening at other universities as well. There was another case of there was one last example that I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, the most shocking example. So there's a monument in South Africa called the Afrikaanse Taal Monument, the Afrikaans Language Monument, that was built to celebrate the language of Afrikaans. I don't think there's another monument in the world that celebrates a language. I might be wrong, but that's how I remember it. It's the only language monument in the world. But it's called the Afrikaans Language Monument, the Afrikaanse Taal Monument. But this year, an ANC minister said that proposed that the monument be renamed, that the Afrikaans should be taken out of it. It should just be the language monument of South Africa, which is not only absurd, it's also incredibly malicious and evil. So you have a language that has this very rich heritage of being only, I think, one of 3 languages to develop from a basic language up until like a university academic level language in the past 100 years. And that language having a monument built to itself, and then the new regime coming in and saying, well, we're gonna take that heritage away from you. This is everyone's monument now. And I think that's that whole idea of this thing that's special to you, this thing that your culture or your language values or your religion values, it's everyone's now. You can't exclusively have it. You can't exclude people. This is everyone's monument. This is everyone's special place now. That, I think, is something you're going to see a lot more in the future of America. You're going to see a lot more of things that are special to particular communities being democratized, if I can use that term, where it's just, this is everyone's statue now. That's statues that are not removed. They're going to make into everyone's statue. This is no longer a monument to Christianity. This is a monument to love or some bullshit like that. That's going to happen in your future, because that's happening in South Africa now. The monument hasn't been renamed, but that was this year where an ANC politician, a minister, threatened that should happen. But Afriforum, there was a massive protest there, colored and white people standing up against that decision, and Afriforum also did a massive campaign against it. But we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, it's definitely a disturbing trend that we're seeing everywhere. Yeah, I expect that they will do the democratization of it in those circumstances where they simply, can't take it down and replace it with some sort of, dusky brutalist or, postmodern monstrosity, monuments to nothing. Yeah, an ugly set of circumstances. I want to see if it's all right with you if we have any questions that anyone.
Absolutely. I think Yeah, I've still we can when we're done with the questions in the chat, then I think we can wrap it up. I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay. Well, I did see one. I'll go ahead and ask anyone who has questions to go ahead and run them by us now, so that Edens can take a look at them before he has to go. But I did see one from Robert Sturman. He said, could you please ask Conscious Caracal if Afriforum are interested in graduate internships and volunteer medics? And then he mentions trained armed response teams, which I assume he's talking about there would be within the context of licensed and lawful private security forces.
So yeah, we handle that on a branch by branch basis. So I don't know if he lives in South Africa or not, but if you live in South Africa, you can just go to the Get Involved section on the Afriforum website, and there you can see if there's a branch close to you. I think most of these branches do medical training. They do. They would welcome any volunteers that help them that have medical training that can help them with first aid, especially the neighborhood watchers. But like I said, that's something you have to figure out on a branch by branch basis. Afriforum is not just one organization in one town or one city. We have a massive branch network, and each of them have their own levels of development already. Some have just a few dozen members, some already are volunteers, some have hundreds of volunteers. That all depends on where that particular branch is. I might be getting a little ahead of myself, but I just saw a question here that has a very quick answer, so I might as well cover it. There's a question there that asks, does Afriforum accept foreign donations? Yes, you can't become a member of Afriforum. To become a member, you have to be in South Africa, but you can donate to Afriforum if you live abroad. You just go to Friends of Afriforum. Just Google Friends of Afriforum, and there you can donate towards helping communities in South Africa become state-proof and survive.
Indeed. And I encourage everyone who is interested to do so to search for Friends of Afriforum on Google. Let me see here. I don't see any further questions unless
if there's no further questions, I would like to end on a white poll. if that's possible.
let me ask one of my own.
Yeah, sure.
What has been the reception of this report thus far? Because this is an update, to the earlier issue of it, to keep it within people's awareness and to, as you said, document these things. There's certainly further instances of most of the miserable shit on, in the first report. It continues, so it should be documented. What have been the successes associated with it thus far, and what do you hope to do with it? Where do you hope it will go in future?
Right. So some of the big successes so far is just all of the opportunities I've gotten so far from international contacts that have spoken to me on their YouTube channels about it, and also a lot of I shouldn't say rather Afriforum's political contacts in the broader world that we've sent it to, that use it in their own work, that have used it as sources. Particularly this report is still in its early stages, seeing as it's only now went out. So how it will be used, it remains to be seen. I'm using the previous report as my indicator of how this one will be used. The previous report was widely cited. It was used by many people abroad in their own writing and in their own research and in their own documenting and analysis. And it was also used by Afriforum when we went on liaison tours in other countries. This report will be used on our future liaison tours to other countries. But like I said, its potential and its value still lies ahead in regards to how it will be used. I've seen it used already. But I'll be able to have a clearer picture of how successful it was in regards to how many people have incorporated it into their own research and their own content in about a few more months. But just from seeing how many people have read it already, it's already far exceeded my expectations. We've already had a massive amount of people that have read it, so that's already a good thing. But how it will be used, that remains to be seen. But I'm if it's anything like the previous report that we released in 2020, I'm very optimistic.
Very good. Well, you said you wanted to end this on a white pill.
Yeah, I want to end on the white pill of there are many things that when you look at South Africa, that will make you, yeah, I mean, the best word is probably blackpilled. It's going to make you bit downtrodden. It's going to make you think that, oh, the doom is inevitable. I might as well just let it happen. But the bright side of that is that you can see in South Africa a glimpse of the future in regards to how people react to a crisis, or how people can react to a crisis. So you don't have to think that, well, what if crisis were to happen, real crisis were to happen in my own country, will brave people stand up? How will the solutions look in regards to that? You can just look at South Africa, how during times of necessity, the right people stood up and they did their part. I mean, the riots in 2021 were the best example. Those brave individuals and communities that stood up to defend themselves, none of them had any social media presence. None of them had leadership training or experience in like leadership positions. They were regular people that just knew, if I don't do anything, nobody is going to do it. And it just organically happened. All these communities standing together to defend themselves. And that's what I want people to see in what's happening in South Africa, is to see how leaders organically come to the fore. Like I said earlier, oh no, actually no, I said this on a previous stream. Don't wait for that hero on the white horse on the horizon. That he might not even come during a crisis. Those heroes are going to come to the fore, and they're going to be the people you least expect. They're not going to be this general that's on a horse. They're going to be your neighbor. They're going to be someone down the street. They're going to be one of your friends. They're going to be your colleagues at work. They're going to be people in your community that come to the fore because necessity demands it. And I mean, this is what I want people to take heart from, because when you live in a country where it's still a high trust society, there might be some deterioration. But I mean, America is still a far way away from South Africanization. But don't despair in the fact that you're not seeing a bunch of like highly organized neighborhood watches around you like we have in South Africa. Don't despair because there isn't like an Afriforum already, that type of organization in the United States already. Those types of organizations come to the fore out of necessity when the temperature has gotten a lot higher. And you can see it in South Africa as well. In parts of South Africa where crime is not as bad as in other parts, the neighborhood watchers are very lax, or maybe not even there. They're like, oh, it's just my hobby. In the places where crime has already become a very big problem, the neighborhood watchers are also as serious to match the problem. So it's not just their hobby. They're doing it not just because, oh man, I'm bored. They're doing it because they have to. And those oaks are serious. They're not playing around. And that's what you see in South Africa, and not just in South Africa, is that don't despair because you don't see all these heroes around you. Where are all these strong men to make turn these bad times into good times again? It takes bad times for the strong men to arrive. That's what you're going to see. It's just a natural progression. So that's my white pill that I wanted to end on, is don't fear living in bad times. You don't have a control over that. That's where God chose you to live in the long chain of being. Some of your ancestors went through a lot worse than you are going to go through in your lifetime. Just take heart in the fact that the benefit of living in good times is that you have ample opportunity to live a comfortable, nice life. The benefit of living in hard times is that you have ample opportunity to live a great, meaningful life. And that's what I want to end on.
Well said. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Conscious Caracal. As I said before, down in the description below, you will see links for Afriforum, for Ernst's YouTube channel, his Twitter, if I remember correctly. There should also be a link directly to the World Must Know report. So please do have a look at it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again very much, Ernst, for being here. Always a pleasure to have you as a guest. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. I appreciate it, even those people with whom I disagree. So, yeah, until next time, I am Semiagog, and I am out.